Elon Musk stood at the podium, the room enveloped in a heavy silence, charged with anticipation. He gripped the podium's edge, shoulders slightly hunched, and for a moment he was wordless, as if the thoughts he held were too weighty to voice. Finally, he spoke, his tone soft and uneven. "I'm not here to talk about grand plans, ideas, or the future. I want to tell you a story." The audience stirred, intrigued but uncertain. Musk wasn't known for such moments. Swallowing hard, he lifted his gaze. "It's about Moses," he said, "and the Exodus." The room grew quieter still. "I've been thinking about him a lot," Musk continued, his voice trembling faintly. "Moses, the man who led the Israelites out of Egypt, who stood before Pharaoh and demanded, 'Let my people go.' The man who faced impossible odds yet found a way forward. But what strikes me most is that Moses didn't want any of it." He paused, scanning the crowd, his voice softening. "Moses didn't think he was the right person. He didn't want to lead. He felt incapable. And I've been feeling that too, like I don't have what it takes for what's been asked of me." Tears glistened in the audience's eyes as he took a deep breath, steadying himself. "Moses argued with God," he went on. "He said, 'Who am I to face Pharaoh? I'm not a good speaker. I'm not strong enough.' He doubted himself constantly. Yet God chose him. God called him." Elon's voice wavered, but he pressed forward. "I've felt that weight-toothed fear of not being enough, of failing. But Moses didn't lead because he was perfect or had all the answers. He led because he trusted." The room froze, the silence not empty but brimming with meaning. "Moses stood before the Red Sea," Musk said, his voice growing steadier, "with no idea what to do. Pharaoh's army was closing in behind him, and an uncrossable sea stretched ahead. All he could do was trust. God told him to raise his staff, and he did, and the sea parted." His voice cracked, and he glanced away, running a hand through his hair. "I feel like I'm standing before my own Red Sea, where everything seems impossible, where I don't know the next step, where I'm scared that nothing I do will be enough." The audience held its breath, captivated. "But Moses taught me something," he continued. "Even when the sea seems too vast, when the path feels hopeless, there's a way forward, not because we can do it alone, but because something greater makes a way." His words carried undeniable weight. "I don't have all the answers. I don't know how to part my sea." But Moses didn't either. He took the step he was asked to take. He trusted when he didn't understand. And that's what I'm trying to do, to trust, to take one step, even when I'm scared. Tears fell quietly in the room as his voice softened further. Moses didn't lead because he was strong. He led because he obeyed, because he believed, even when he wasn't fearless. That's what I need to do. That's what we all need to do. Take that first step. Trust the sea will part, even when we can't see how." He paused, gathering himself, then met the crowd's eyes. "We all have a Red Sea, something too big, too impossible. But maybe the way forward is waiting for us to take that first step, to raise the staff in our hands, even when it feels futile, to trust." The room remained still, every person absorbed in the gravity of his words. Musk stepped back from the podium, his breathing steady but his eyes glistening. No applause or cheers followed, just a quiet understanding, a shared realization that they all had their own seas to cross, and for the first time, they believed they could. The silence lingered, but something urged Musk to continue. Gripping the podium again, he leaned forward, his voice low but resolute. "There's more to Moses' story, more I've been wrestling with." The audience, already moved by his honesty, hung on his words. Moses didn't just face the Red Sea. He faced doubt, not just his own, but from the people he was leading. The Israelites didn't trust him at first. They were angry, saying he'd made their lives worse, not better. I think about that a lot. He paused, his fingers tracing the podium's edge. Can you imagine what that felt like? To lead while everyone questions if you're the right person, while you're questioning it yourself? His emotion deepened. But Moses didn't quit. He didn't walk away, even when it would have been easier, even when he probably wanted to. Taking a deep breath, his gaze drifted to the back of the room. I've felt that weight tooth expectations, trying to lead when I don't feel enough, trying to be strong for others when I'm not sure I have the strength myself. A few in the audience wiped their eyes. But Moses' story reminds me he didn't lead because he was perfect. He led because he was called, because he believed in something greater. Even without answers, even when he didn't know how to move forward, he kept going. His eyes, filled with emotion, met the crowd's. That's what I'm learning, to carry the weight, to trust when it's hard, to keep going when I don't know what's ahead. The room stayed still, Musk's vulnerability drawing them deeper into the story, not just of Moses, but of himself. He paused, glancing down, then continued, his voice quieter. There's another part of Moses' story that keeps me up at night, the loneliness. The crowd leaned in, caught by the rawness of his words. Moses wasn't just leading people. He was leading people who didn't understand him, who doubted him, who blamed him when things went wrong. I think about how lonely he must have felt, carrying that weight, trying to believe in something bigger while they questioned him every step of the way. The silence deepened. "I've felt that loneliness," Musk admitted, his voice heavy. "Not the kind from being alone in a room, but the loneliness of knowing that no matter how hard you try, some will never see the effort, the decisions, the sacrifices." His words resonated with anyone who'd ever carried more than they thought possible. He exhaled slowly, but Moses kept going. Even when the people grumbled, even when they turned against him, even when he stood on that mountain, begging God for strength, he didn't quit. The room stirred, not with restlessness, but connection. "That's what I'm trying to hold on to," Musk said. "Sometimes leadership isn't about being perfect or everyone understanding you. It's about continuing, even when the weight feels crushing. It's about faith." His gaze swept the room, and for the first time, he saw nods. The audience wasn't just listening, they were with him. His voice softened, the weight of his words lingering. But doubt doesn't just vanish. Even after God spoke to him directly, Moses struggled to believe he was enough. "I know what that feels like," he continued. Moses told God, "I'm not the right person. I can't speak well. I can't do this." And God didn't say, "You'll figure it out," or "You're stronger than you think." He said, "I will be with you." The room grew quieter still, Musk's voice carrying a new strength. "That's been on my mind, what it means to trust you're not alone, that even when the weight is unbearable, something greater is carrying it too." Moses didn't lead because he was fearless or perfect. He led because he trusted God's presence was enough. That's what I'm trying to learn, even when I don't have answers. Even when I can't take another step, I'm not alone. The crowd sat in silence, the intensity of his words enveloping them. Maybe that's what we all need to remember, he said, his voice heavy with emotion. We don't have to do it alone. Even when we face an impossible sea, we're not alone. Never alone. The connection between Musk and the audience deepened, his words belonging to everyone. Taking a deep breath, he continued, his hands resting lightly on the podium, the weight he carried seeming lighter. But here's what strikes me most about Moses' story. It's not just that he trusted God's promise to be with him. It's that he kept going, even when things got harder after he said yes. The audience remained captivated. When Moses first told Pharaoh, "Let my people go," things didn't improve, they worsened. Pharaoh forced the Israelites to work harder, taking away the straw for bricks but demanding the same output. And the people blamed Moses. A murmur of recognition passed through the crowd. Moses could have given up, Musk said softly. He could have said, "I tried, but it's too hard." But he didn't. He went back, trusting God hadn't abandoned him, even when it looked that way. He gripped the podium tightly. That's been a hard lesson for me. Sometimes, when you step out in faith, things don't get easier, they get harder. And in those moments, when you want to quit, you have to remember why you started. The room was still, his words reaching every corner. Moses didn't give up because he wasn't doing it for himself, Musk said firmly. He was doing it for the people he was called to lead, for something bigger than his own comfort or success. That's what I remind myself when I want to quit. It's not about me. It's about the people depending on me, whether they know it or not. His eyes swept the room, vulnerability flickering. Maybe that's what keeps us all going. Not an easy path, but the belief that what we're doing matters, even when it's hard. The silence that followed was full of understanding. Musk looked out at the audience, their faces mirroring his struggles and questions. Stepping back from the podium, he hesitated, then leaned forward again. But here's the thing, Moses didn't get to see the promised land. The crowd stirred, the unexpected twist drawing them closer. He led the people through the wilderness for 40 years, through hunger, rebellion, battles. He gave everything, even when they doubted him, even when they turned away from God. And after all that, he didn't cross the Jordan. He saw it from a distance, but never set foot in it. His voice wavered, but he continued. That's been hard for me to understand. It feels unfair, doesn't it? To give so much, to sacrifice, and not get the reward you've worked for. The crowd was quiet, some nodding. But the more I think about it, Musk said, his voice steadying, the more I realize Moses' story wasn't about him. It was about what God was doing through him for others, for the people he led, for the generations that followed. He paused, hands resting lightly on the podium. Maybe that's the real calling, to do what we're asked, even when we don't see the full outcome, to trust that what we're building, what we're sacrificing for, will matter, not just to us, but to those who come after. Tears rolled down a few faces. Moses didn't enter the promised land, Musk said softly. But he fulfilled his purpose. He led the people there. He gave them hope, a future. Maybe that's what leadership by, laying the foundation for others to succeed, even if you don't see it yourself. The room was still, every heart tied to his words. He stood silent, letting the meaning sink in. The weight of his words filled the room as he looked down, gathering his thoughts, then raised his head, his voice calm but emotional. That's where I am now, trying to understand what it means to lead, even when I might not see the end. To trust that what I'm doing isn't about me, but about what's being built through me for others, for the future. The audience clung to every word. Moses wasn't perfect. He doubted, he failed, he got angry. But he stayed faithful to the call. That's what I want to hold on to, that even in my failures and doubts, the work isn't in vain. His voice grew reflective. When Moses stood on that mountain, looking at the promised land he wouldn't enter, I wonder what he felt. Was he disappointed? At peace? Maybe he knew the journey was worth it, that it wasn't about him getting there, but about the people he led. His gaze swept the room, meeting the audience's eyes. That's what we all have to hold on to. Sometimes our purpose isn't about what we achieve, but what we leave behind, the lives we touch, the people we lift up, the hope we give to those who come after. A few nodded, others wiped tears. Musk straightened, his voice stronger. I don't have all the answers. I don't know how my journey will end, but I know this: we're all part of something bigger, something we can't always see. Even when the way forward feels impossible, we have to keep going, not for ourselves, but for the people counting on us. He stepped back from the podium, the room silent but brimming with hope, reflection, and connection. As he walked off the stage, he felt a peace he hadn't known in years, not because he had all the answers, but because he knew he didn't need to. He was part of something greater, and that was enough.